So, there I was, floating peacefully in my own backyard pool, enjoying the warm afternoon sun beating down on me. The kids were inside, watching TV, and I finally had a moment to myself. My name is Marcus, and after a long career in the army, serving overseas and dealing with challenges both on and off the battlefield, I finally earned this tranquil slice of paradise. It was a hot summer day in our quiet suburban neighborhood, where family-oriented get-togethers and friendly waves were the norm. Most of the neighbors were terrific, but there was one woman who stood out like a sore thumb: Karen. Now, Karen wasn't just any typical neighbor. She was the well-known HOA enforcer, arms crossed, bleach blonde bob, and a stare that could pierce through ice. She loved nothing more than to remind her neighbors about the rules and regulations she believed we all had to follow. Heaven forbid you didn't maintain your lawn to her standard, or worse, if your children made too much noise while playing in their own yard. As I lounged there, the cool water enveloping my body, I was completely unaware that Karen was plotting her next grand disruption. Little did I know, she had decided that today was the day she'd flex her so-called authority. I had just begun to drift off, listening to the faint sounds of kids playing in the distance, when suddenly, I heard the creaking of my gate swinging open. I opened my eyes and squinted toward the sun, trying to make out the figure storming toward me. Sure enough, it was none other than Karen, striding toward the pool like she was about to present a case to the Supreme Court. "Excuse me," she called out, voice sharp enough to cut through the water. "What do you think you're doing?" I blinked, confused. Just enjoying a nice day in my pool?" "Not anymore," she said, eyebrows knitting together in that all-too-familiar glare. "You need to vacate the premises immediately." "I'm about to go for my afternoon swim." I chuckled, thinking it was a joke. "What? This is my pool, Karen. My name is literally on the property deed." "That doesn't matter," she retorted, indignant. "I'm a member of the HOA, and I will not tolerate you ruining the ambience of this neighborhood. Now, please get out of the pool." It was at that moment the absurdity hit me. Who did this woman think she was? I wasn't swimming in her yard, and the last time I checked, the local laws didn't include a clause about banning me from my own property for her convenience. In a calm voice, I replied, "I think you're misunderstanding something here. I pay my dues just like everyone else in this neighborhood, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going anywhere." And just like that, sensing she was losing control of the conversation, Karen escalated her little power play. "You know what? I'm calling my husband." "Oh, great," I said sarcastically. "I'll hang out here until he arrives so we can all have a good laugh." Karen's eyes narrowed, and I could see the gears turning in her head. She stormed closer to my fence and pulled out her cell phone. I watched her dial the number, and I knew in that moment what was about to happen. "Hello, honey. I need you to come home right now," she screeched, leaning against the fence like she was waiting to send someone into battle. "There's a black man in our community pool. He's refusing to leave." I nearly choked on my laughter, still floating obliviously. "Wow, we're going with black man now? Is that how you'll refer to me when you tell everyone about this?" Before she could respond, I smiled at the ridiculousness of it all. I should have been furious, but instead, I found it all rather humorous. I could have easily gotten out, but where's the fun in that? I wanted to see what she would do next. Seconds later, a squad car pulled into the driveway, and out stepped none other than her husband, Officer Dave. He was built like a tank and looked confused as he assessed the scene before him. For the record, I respected law enforcement and had some good friends in the service. Still, there was no way I was going to let this turn into a Karen versus the black man showdown without a good fight. "Marcus," I said to myself quietly, "stay calm." As Officer Dave walked over, I lifted myself up from the pool enough to see him. "Hey, officer. How's it going?" "Not great, Marcus," he replied cautiously, peering at Karen's eager face and my relaxed manner. "What's going on here?" "She's trying to kick me out of my own pool," I explained nonchalantly. "I was just minding my own business when she started yelling at me, saying I could no longer swim because she wanted to." At that point, I could see the internal conflict on his face. As much as he seemed to want to believe his wife, the moment he looked at me, body language relaxed, casually swimming in my own pool, he hesitated. "Ma'am, is this true?" he asked Karen. "Of course. He doesn't belong here," she shrieked, throwing her hands in the air dramatically. "Why don't you let him speak?" Officer Dave asked, folding his arms. I smiled, realizing that perhaps Officer Dave didn't have the blind loyalty Karen had hoped for. "I've lived here for years, been part of this community since I retired from the army, and I have no intention of leaving my own property for her whims. It's literally in my deed." "Wait, you're retired military?" The officer raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking on his face. "Yes, I was an army general for 20 years, I replied, my voice steady. "I fought for the rights of people like her to live freely. So if anyone has a claim to this community, I think it's me." The gears in Officer Dave's mind seemed to start turning faster. Confusion was giving way to realization as he turned to Karen. "And why exactly are you harassing him?" he asked, the tone of his voice shifting from one of authority to incredulity. Infuriated, Karen seemed to sputter for a moment, scrambling for an explanation that wouldn't make her look bad. But he's just being disrespectful." "Disrespectful how?" Officer Dave challenged. "You're the one who charged into a private property situation demanding someone leave their own home." It was pure delight watching Karen's facial expressions shift from arrogance to desperation as she stammered, "That's not fair. You can't just let him do this." "Why not?" The grin on my face was practically ear to ear. "I'm not breaking any laws. This is my property." Karen's impatience and anger boiled over as she flailed her arms, her fury radiating off her like heat. "You can't let him just swim whenever he wants." The bewilderment in Officer Dave's eyes edged him closer to laughter. "Well, ma'am, if he's on his property with a pool that he owns, then that's his right. I can't just order him to leave because you don't think he fits the mold for this neighborhood." The air suddenly shifted, and I could feel the tension evaporate. Karen stood there, mouth agape, desperately trying to save face. Unwilling to take loss for an answer, she switched tactics. "Well, if he really was a general, he wouldn't even be swimming here without an appointment." "An appointment?" I burst into laughter, and I gestured to the half-empty pool. "I didn't realize I needed a meeting to enjoy my home. Maybe I should schedule that directly through your HOA calendar." Officer Dave chuckled, seemingly relieved to witness the chaotic yet hilarious display unfolding before him. I caught him shaking his head slightly, and I knew that I had somehow won this battle. Karen's face turned scarlet, a mixture of anger and embarrassment coursing through her features. "You think this is a joke?" "I'm merely looking out for our neighborhood." Officer Dave couldn't help but smile now, shaking his head in disbelief. "If you were really looking out for the neighborhood, you'd be minding your own business and not bothering someone enjoying themselves at their own home." With that, I turned my attention back to my pool, sinking into the refreshing water and letting out a satisfied sigh. Karen's demeanor began to crack, and I realized how the entire situation had spiraled into a mess of her own making. With no escape route left, she stammered angrily, "You haven't heard the last of this." "Oh, I think we have," I called cheerfully, feeling liberated in my victory. I let out a triumphant laugh, and Officer Dave finally burst into a fit of laughter, shaking his head in disbelief as he mustered the energy to shift his stance. "Ma'am, I think it's time you take a breath and reevaluate how you perceive everyone in this neighborhood," he said with a smirk. And just like that, Karen's pink blazer billowed behind her like a flag of surrender as she stormed off, defeated. "I'll be reporting this," she yelled over her shoulder, but even her voice lost some of its strength as she noticed the amused looks on both our faces. As her retreating figure disappeared into the distance, I let out a sigh of relief mixed with the satisfaction of winning a ridiculous battle. Officer Dave smiled at me and shook his head, still chuckling. "You got to love life in a neighborhood with an HOA, right?" "Absolutely," I replied, relaxing and leaning back against the edge of the pool. We exchanged a few more laughs as he stood on the poolside deck, and I realized something important had shifted. I could choose to fight against ridiculous behavior, to stand my ground against the absurdity of petty attitudes that people like Karen perpetuated. But ultimately, I wanted to live in joy and laughter, a mindset far more powerful than any control someone like her could ever hope to exert. "Enjoy your swim, General," he said before turning to leave. "Thanks, officer," I called back. "And tell your wife I will be happy to bring the dessert if she wants to join someday. Tell her to stop by with Karen if they have the time." As he walked away, I knew I'd just uncovered an injustice worth sharing. I'd reminded my neighbors that they could reject unreasonable expectations and stop allowing others to dictate their joy. And in the end, I knew that my victory wasn't merely about winning the right to swim in my own pool. It was about embracing the happiness I'd fought so hard to maintain in my life. Sometimes, laughter and community were the best weapons against those who thought they held the reins of power. And I was determined to enjoy every splash in my pool, knowing I had won a little battle against some absurdity to reclaim my peace.